A person is always worth saving, but people, well, that's a different story.
What?
You know, from the trolley problem to deciding where you want to eat with your friends, we are taught again and again that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. But when the many are controlled by a few and the few don't really seem to care about us, it all makes it feel like this isn't worth it, like none of it is worth fighting for. Humanity as a whole is a lost cause.
Just as I thought, trash.
But then, one conversation with an actual human being changes everything. There's empathy and connection, and we start to see that humanity is this fragile, beautiful thing. And that's the difference. A person is worth saving, but people aren't. In this video, I'm going to talk about how we can challenge that difficult thinking so that people are worth it too. Let's do it. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I use this channel as a way to speak to myself in an open letter, and I hope that you listen to. And I talk about whatever I want to talk about. And today I want to talk about why people suck, but a person doesn't. I think about this a lot because I have that quote from Men in Black.
A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it.
On some level, we all understand, because we've been the victim of it or a perpetrator of it, that a singular person is very smart and oftentimes somewhat easy to reason with. But the larger the group becomes, the harder it is to sort of reach that understanding and reach that reasoning. Humanity feels overwhelming and destructive and selfish, and it's so hard to see the suffering that's happening in the world and know that that's because of us. And I wouldn't even say outside of massive ecological disasters, because climate change itself is causing a lot of those things. And so it's easy for me to really look at humanity and think it is a scourge on this earth, and it's just a virus, and we are just horrible things and horrible creatures. And this becomes a paradox because you probably notice that people, a collection and a collective of people are frustrating, but a person is deeply reasonable and deeply compassionate and deeply meaningful. This can be true in a spectrum and in nuance, because on one side, it can be easy for me to attach villainy to an entire group of people. And at the same time, it's difficult to have compassion for a group of people. And I think coupled with horrifying violations of human rights and horrifying destruction by people against people, I always get to this question: why is one person so easy to care about, but a group of people isn't? And we're seeing this happen in Gaza right now, and on all of these places where there is humanitarian crisis, where I get targeted ads on my socials from individuals asking for help. And that breaks my heart open, and it's easy for me to then support them how I can. But then to look at the totality of how can I help an entire group of people, it feels beyond daunting, and it feels impossible, especially when it is up against another group of people who could destroy me as well. And so that fear sets in too. Or how can we incorporate the simplicity of supporting a person into the scale of supporting people or holding people accountable, as it is easy to hold a singular person accountable in theory? And okay, so because all of this swirls around in my head, and I'm sure you experience this too, that because there is no definitive answer and because there is no clear path forward or clear path as to how to do this, we revert into cynicism. You push away the idea that people matter. You start looking for reasons as to why humanity sucks. And then you're like me, where you even have that point where you say it's pointless. we are a virus. We take, we take, we take. We don't give anything. Then you have one hangout with your friends. You meet one particularly kind stranger at a coffee shop. You stop and have a random conversation with someone, or you call an old friend. And these moments unexpectedly break through our cynicism. And in these moments, through that vulnerability and through that kindness and through those interactions, these become our mentor moments of remembering that and a return to that idea and understanding about what humanity is capable of on the good side. As I was scripting this video, I started this because I was in a horrible mood and just hated the world, hated people. So I was like kind of like building out the script, but I had to pause to go see a friend and like help them out with something. And I came back after hanging out with them. I came back to the script and it was hard for me to continue to write because my whole opinion had changed, because I felt so much better about humanity from that one interaction, from that one person, that one friend. And so, yeah, how do we imbue that into thinking about humanity as a whole? Because one person's humanity reminds us what compassion feels like. And so because of this compassion, we then start to lean in and crave it more. And so we start seeking it and looking for it. We try to have more one-on-one conversations. We try to be more kind to people in public places. And instead of constantly looking at my phone or constantly disengaged with the world around me, I do try, and maybe you do try to engage with people, to share and see that humanity. And because of that exposure, you start to embrace nuance, start to remember the complexity of humanity and not just these generalizations about people. And this is the beginning of empathy, because inside of every bad interaction there is a good, and inside of every good interaction there is bad, right? We see this everywhere, this call for balance, or this call for nuance and complexity of not everything is starkly enjoyable or unenjoyable, or starkly good or starkly bad. It's just the nuance of living. Like all good things with the universe, when we commit to a lifestyle or a thought experiment, or in thinking about changing our opinion about how we think about people, the universe will always test that patience. We encounter more destructive groups on social media. We see more hate groups in the news. We see more of that disconnection everywhere, because we are being tested on our ability to believe in the connection. But the real test comes from knowing how to operate when it's people or a person, yes, versus these systems that we've created, these ways of life that for a long time made things easier, or order created this function, but part of that order has become a little bit of dehumanization through it. And how do we reckon with humanity when there is active dehumanization happening to a singular person or to groups of people? And that dehumanization is constantly fed, every rage bait comment, every call to action against someone else, every vitriolic diatribe that happens online. We're constantly tested, and therefore constantly in this push-pull of, well, is it all worth it? Like, sure, a person may be good and people may not always be good, but does that make it worth it? Like, are we just a lost cause? Because we'll always be susceptible to groupthink, and we'll always be susceptible to our biological nature of wanting to fit in, because we're not isolated creatures. Any lone wolf or alpha dog or alpha thing you can ever think about is all a lie, because humans are creatures who need community to not only thrive, but survive. And these tests, these collisions happen between our perspective of how we want the world and how we want humans to behave and act and be versus the reality of how they are. Because crowds fail people all the time. And also, crowds can save people. And a singular person can step up and change an entire crowd's perspective. And so you face a moment where these perspectives collide, where these feelings of crowds and humanity and people collide because a crowd can fail someone, but one person steps up. And there's that thought of people don't care versus one person cares. And it's like posting content, right? I know in reality, or in the reality that we all share, that posting this video does not matter, or like people don't care about what I have to say. But one person does. And that makes this all kind of worth it. And one person can do a lot. And it's not even just like the Kendall Jenners of the Pepsi of it all, but it is that truth that one person does have a lot of power to sway a group. And so many of us are, myself, like so many of us are afraid to really step out in a group for fear of reprimand, fear of ostracization, being kicked out, and just then being left as like a pariah, you know? And that hurts. And that fear of loneliness is what then drives us so quickly to jump on board to groups and jump on board to things that aren't good. And that if we were alone, we would very quickly say, no, I'm not going to do that. But when you're surrounded by a bunch of other people who are, it makes it that much harder to say no. It's still possible, yes, but it makes it harder. And because it's hard, and because of so many of us have those feelings, but don't act on them, or have that impulse to step away from a group, but don't act on them, it tugs on our deepest fear, or a deep fear of us that compassion is rare, meaningless, fragile, and that it's so easy for me to be compassionate on a good day, but when I'm having a bad day, what does compassion look like that? And that starts to ask the question whether individual kindness matters or it's lost in the sauce of a group. And in all of this, here is the truth. Humans are awful in groups because they dissolve accountability. But individuals shine when they're seen, heard, and understood. And the reward of all of this, and the reward of it all, is this clarity that a person is worth saving, even if people aren't. And when we remember that, we can start to prioritize our one-on-one interactions, start to cherish them, responding to individuals instead of abstractions, right? Looking at a group and starting to think about each individual in that group and what they're afraid of and what they're experiencing and what drove them to be a part of this group. And recognizing that, yes, there may be wickedness and truly wicked people in this world who have no rhyme or reason. And maybe recognizing that that number is considerably smaller than what we think. And so we can reject these cynical generalizations of a group because they may not be an entire group of these wicked people. It may just be one wicked person who's charismatic, who can help direct the world to be what it is, or direct the group to be what it is. And kind of like how we are made of stardust, and how we are a collection of atoms that connect together to form the matter that is our bodies, and then our souls inhabit that, and that gives us us. And when we start to think about even ourselves as this collection of smaller pieces, we can start to remember that meaning is derived from this micro and not the macro. Not these generalizations of groups of people, but microcosms and the micro of a group, which is an individual. And so finally, throughout all of this, finally, you can get to a conclusion to it all. One final test that tests your insight of choosing to care for a person, even if you are frustrated with humanity. And despite your frustration with humanity, you still care for an individual. And you don't have to save everyone. It is not your charge to save every person. I think it is our collective charge as humanity to save one person. But the person I'm going to save is not the person you're going to save, because there are boundaries that are important. And if someone's version of being in a group is a group that goes against your rights or your willingness to live the life that you want to live, they may not be the person you are charged to save. And that is okay. We don't have to try to save humanity. You just have to save one person, because meaning lives in the specific, not the general. I mean, I think that's it. Who are you saving today? That's my question for you, or my call to action as well, is try to save a person today. And be a little liberal with the word save, whatever that means. Maybe you're a little nicer to someone online. Maybe you let someone cut in front of you in line for your coffee, or the checkout line, or something like that. Because saving doesn't have to be these huge, what we think of when we think of saving. Like, you don't have to jump into a burning building to save someone. And in fact, the person you may save today is yourself. And that's just as good as anyone else. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. You are incredible. And yeah, share this with someone who you want to save, and share this with someone who you want to save people with. I'll see you in the next one. Okay. Bye-bye.